My dad did not speak to me for a year. Literally 1 year, he didn't talk to me at all.
That's Shane Cultra. And the reason he's saying that is because he decided to walk away from his family's business. And for a very interesting reason, by the way.
I'm not going to lie. I think succession is the reason I left.
Shane is a fifth-generation nurseryman. Or nurseryman? He's a plant farmer, anyway. And this is the story of a family legacy and how a narrow view of that can pull your family apart. Shane went from being a stock trader, the kind before computers, screaming buy or sell across a busy room, to back to the family business and then eventually stepping away for good, much to the dismay of his father. Along the way, he's amassed a net worth of about 10 million and started a family and is now raising his daughter with an entirely new set of expectations. I'm Harry Morton, and this is Moneywise, a podcast that only exists because of the Hampton community. So if you're a founder doing at least 3 million in ARR, you should go and check it out at joinhampton.com. The thing with Shane's story is that his relationship with money and work ethic are actually both quite healthy. And that's because of his family business, not in spite of it. So before you start thinking this is a simple story about why you shouldn't pressure your kids to be involved in your business, you should know that it's more nuanced than that. And the nuance holds a lot of value, actually. But let's get to what you're waiting for, the numbers.
I calculated out I'm worth about $10 million when it's all said and done. I feel the nursery is probably a $10 million asset at this point between all the land and the cash flow and entities. And so I put that, a little over $3 million. Liquid? No, it's got to be a for sale. So it's not something that I ever feel I can extract. But one thing I mentioned is during the NFT era of buying and selling NFTs and crypto. And that's the other beautiful part about domains is domains are a digital asset. So crypto and Bitcoin made a lot of sense to us early. I don't have as much as I have, but I still have 12 Bitcoin. And so that's pretty liquid. And my average cost is $11,000 per Bitcoin on that. So I've done really well. My domain name portfolio, that's a little harder to value as an asset. But what I tried to do for my portfolio in my mind is what is the liquid value, and not liquid where one guy's or a person's going to buy the entire portfolio tomorrow. But if I put them up for auction at various auction places and timed it out, how much could I get? And it generates 300,000 a year. So $1.5 million is probably the fair value of it. I get half my wife's 401k, which is a beautiful thing since we've been married for 30 years. She doesn't need me. I don't need her, but we're better together. So that's roughly another $1.5 million after it was probably 2 million a couple of weeks ago before Mr. Trump decided to do his tariffs.
Right.
Personal stock, I have some side stock and things that I buy because I'm a trader, and I always keep $300,000 in that account. I also have websites that I build. So you talked about me 25 years of doing the business. I've written a blog called dsad.com and put domain names that are up for auction. So every day there's auctions across the world of domains up for auction. I worked out deals that I would list my favorite and they would pay me a commission if the links came through and they sold. I've been doing that for 17 years and I've never missed a day in the morning. I've posted that for 17 straight years.
I'm hearing there's a decent amount of sort of cash flow still going on. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean
so that feels good.
$500,000 in cash flow is a good year, most years. Yeah. I try and keep $200,000 minimum. I pick up work if I don't have the 200,000.
Well, let's finish off the net worth allocation. Maybe maybe cash is the last piece of the puzzle there.
Yeah. So I have $500,000 in cash just sitting in like a earning deposit, but it grows dramatically every month. So we're thinking about what the next purchase, and we're thinking maybe a vacation home or a rental home, like another home purchase, because we'll get to my asset. Like my smallest one is probably my house. My house is only $500,000, but my house is 3,800 square feet, beautiful house, landscaping. But I'm in the Midwest. In California, it'd be a $6 million house. New York, who knows? But so I put my asset at $250,000 because my wife owns half of that. But I have a beautiful home, but I don't have very much in my real estate. But I've never felt real estate was your best yield, right? People buy real estate because they hope it will go up. I'm not a big fan of the hope it will go up kind of thing. I prefer things that actually yield, that give me yield and go up in value. I want both.
So I'm sure you have a ton of questions based on all of that, and we'll get to the context for everything in a minute. But of course, this is a story about family. So let's start there.
It is much harder than running a regular business. Like if you have partners, it's one thing, but what if your partner's your dad? What if your partner's your brother? What if your partner is your brother's son? How do you navigate that communication? And I've struggled with it. Don't get me wrong. There have been, unfortunately, employees that have witnessed drag out fights, not physical, but maybe close to it when it comes to siblings. But I can tell you one thing, every generation has left the nursery to either go to war or to college. Fortunately, I was the first one to not go to war after 5 generations or come back from war. But every kid works in the nursery growing up, lives there, has plants around them, and then they don't want to do it. But then you get to a point when you're multi-generational and you walk down the streets or you go to a convention or something and they know your name and they know who you are and that you already have ends that give you an opportunity to maybe explore a path that you want to, but within the business. So, for me, I like the online side of it. Well, that wasn't my grandfather's opportunity. My grandfather was retail. So there's different opportunities, but I can tell you every person wants to carve their own path, not in the nursery business.
What was it like when you were a young kid? Like, sort of like going through elementary school, high school? What was your sort of experience of it? How much did you know about it? And kind of what was your attitude towards it?
Yeah. So going back to, my father decided he didn't want to work for his father. So he was in the nursery business his whole life, came back from college, worked there a little while, and they couldn't get along. So my dad said he was going to carve his own path. So my dad was kind of Johnny Appleseed. He went and worked for the paper companies, reforesting trees. So the paper companies, they harvested great in the 70s, but they didn't replant. So my dad came up with, kind of a system to go to them and work on and take his skills as a nurseryman and help them replant and do the business side of it. Help. How often do we grow? How often do we plant? And then he moved into the sales side because he got bored with that and said, I want to learn more about sales. So in the late 80s, he was approached, I don't know the exact scenario, but he met a man who had a new scenario where in the United States, previous to this, you would go to independent nurseries and buy plants from each nursery. So you would go get a tree here, you would go get mulch there, you'd go get pottery here, and you'd go to 6 or 7 different places. And they said, we're going to buy from all those places, put them in one location so that landscapers and people in the trade could get everything they need in one stop. It might be a little bit more expensive than they're used to paying at the individual ones, but time is money. So they can get everything in one place. And the idea blew up. After that company sold, he was where I am now. He was 52, 53, mid 50s and said, okay, I can retire. But the nursery bug bought him back. And so he started his own nursery and he went back home. And I don't know if he would say this, I don't know if I'm putting words in his mouth, but I felt he wanted to show the family what he had learned, that now he was a businessman and a nurseryman. And let's see what we can do when I can combine these skills and with a local nursery growing background and make it work. So my family's nursery was in a smaller town called Onarga, very small town, 1,700 people. It's where my family had been since 1865. My father didn't really want to go to that small town and operate because he wanted to go to where there were more people. About 50 miles away is a college town where the University of Illinois was. And that has 100,000 people. And there was this garden center. And again, this garden center came up for auction. And so this was the perfect scenario, a place that was closer to town, separated away from the family business, and could be operated as its own entity. So keep it separate, officially not the same company, because he knew he couldn't work with his father. I think he thought he could work with his brother, but he really wanted to do it on his own. My dad's an own type of person. It's like I said, it's his way or the highway. He's not a partner kind of guy. And so that's what he did. And that's where I joined him. I was coming out of college, but at the time I was a trader in Chicago. So out of college, I got a job being at the Chicago Options Exchange. I love money. I love trading, and I was doing okay. People don't understand that business. When you're a young trader, you have to have somebody sponsor you. So they give you $1 million, but they take 80% of your revenue. Where the story comes to a close there is I made a trade during a Fed meeting. And it was a very successful trade, but I had a rule where I was not allowed to keep any trades on during big events. And that big event came, I did well, I was excited, I was cheering myself, and the person that backed me for the money came down to the pit and fired me on the spot. That was my path back to the nursery. I don't know if I want to say that I had the nursery bug, but I had a bug of no job.
Did that feel like a bummer at the time? Were you kind of like not happy about that?
It was exciting in the fact that I could have a path to my own. And my dad's a fair man. My dad is a hard man. He cares about you. You know he cares about you. But he's an 80s dad. You know, they were dads. They weren't your friends. So yeah, it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to work for my dad. And you know, a little backstory, my parents were divorced and, you know, they did not get along. So my dad was kind of the bad guy as well. So I knew it'd cause some problems with my mom saying, oh boy, you're working for your dad. And then one more kink in it, I had met a beautiful woman in Chicago who got to witness, like 6 months into our relationship, a man being fired at the Board of Trade. He went from this big high profile trader to now I'm taking her from a 6-figure job to $18,000 a year in the middle of central Illinois.
So what was it like working with your family as an adult at this point?
Yeah, you know, I look back and I was pretty bad at it. Like I didn't have good communication skills. I truly enjoyed it. There's a feeling of hard physical work that there's just something about it. It can't be replaced. I don't care how hard you work behind the computer or, you know, I hear people working 15 to 16 hour jobs. There's a different feeling of a physical labor exhaustion. People talk about having trouble sleeping. I can give you a really good way to sleep, and that's to work your butt off for 10 hours of physical labor. You will sleep. I don't care what your problems are or what the things that are racing through your head. You're going to get a good sleep. But I enjoyed the job. I mean, I was doing it for me. That's when you're doing something that is for you and the end result is for you, it's much better than working for someone. I realized soon I would rather work for $18,000 for me than $100,000 for someone else.
Eventually, Shane found his own path within the business.
There was a crucial conversation with my father saying, I would like to not do landscaping and I would love to start doing retail because retail margins are great. If you can grow a plant and take it all the way through the process to retail, the margins are 80%. It's a huge margin industry. So I asked my father, could I take over retail? And so that was our catalyst.
I have in my notes here $7 million in ARR. Is that right? And
yep.
Talk me through the trajectory then. What did that kind of look like? How long did it take and how quick was that growth?
Yeah, I can tell you that over my first year, I did around 70,000 in retail sales. That's it. So the trajectory was probably sales doubling every year for the first 5 years.
But even so, it was clear it wasn't working on a family level.
My dad's a margin guy. I'm a profit dollar. We kind of argue about that sometimes because I feel we pay the bills with profits. And he says, well, if you have good margins, you'll have good profits.
Right. Who wins that argument usually?
He always wins the argument. I don't think that ever. The answer, I think, is both. He's not wrong. But I do feel if you have the finances to sell 1 million of them and make $1 million is better than selling 10 and making 500,000. Right? His margins would be way better, but I made a lot more money. But he always said, well, you don't have eternal money. I always pretended I did. Like if I had all the money in the world, how would I approach this? I use the example of my house. Like when I built my house, I didn't look at houses when I was designing and doing, I didn't look at houses that were similar to what I wanted to build. I went and looked at the nicest houses and said, what do they have? What does the interior look like? What is the exterior? And then of that, what can I afford? So I always did that with the plants and how I approach things. It's like, if I could do it with unlimited resources, what would it look like? And then I would scale it down.
Yeah. What's that like, by the way, that dynamic? Like, and how was it for you as like an adult trying to do his own thing, working for a guy, this kind of Stonewall my way or the highway kind of vibe? Like, what was that like? I mean, it sounds like you've had your moments over the years of like,
it's brutal.
You know?
It was, this is, again, I talk about this all the time. I would tell everybody I would rather argue with my dad every day because I get to spend time with him. It's worth it. In hindsight, he was definitely right most of the time. He's definitely right most of the time. But at the same time, what he didn't do well that I do much better is I let my daughter fail. Uncomfortable is where you grow. Like, those are the best stories. Nobody wants to hear the stories about how everything went well. They want to hear how it blew up and how you came back. And my dad was not really great at that part. He could not financially let me fail.
So I want to know, what were you paying yourself along this trajectory?
I made $18,000 a year for the first couple of years, and then I made $22,000. And then even 6 or 7 years, even into the 2000s, I was making $30,000 a year. But you have to remember, I lived in Central Illinois. So even though those numbers seem really low, I had everything I wanted. I had a truck from the nursery. I had a great house. I had 50 acres to play. It was fine. It's really not how much money you make. It's the life you lead, and where you live and how you live your life. Does that enable you to be happy? I did not make 6 figures until literally like during COVID. I just started paying myself six figures.
Wow.
Even though we were making all that money,
wild.
because I had enough. Like, I just wasn't greedy.
But talk to me about the equity that you had. What was your sort of equity situation?
My dad gave me 2% of the company a year. That was what he gave me. It went all the way up until 33%. And the reason I had to stop at 33% is because my brother and my dad's wife also got some equity. And if I got any more than that, he would lose his 51% controlling interest. The other thing, without going into too much detail, with a generational business and a growing business, all your profits go right back into the business. So in paper, you make money and it goes into retained earnings, but there's no cash to pay yourself out at the end of the year.
And I want to just take a moment, because I think it's something kind of unique to what it is that you do, the world that you're in. Can you tell me about the importance of land value for farmers' wealth?
Yeah, so the saying in farming, like whether it's corn and beans or trees, nurserymen become wealthy because they buy land outside of town and utilize it, and then eventually town comes to them and the value of the land increases. For instance, our land, our main business had 52 acres, and the cost at auction was $800. That land now is $25,000 to $50,000 an acre right now.
That's insane.
So
yeah,
the land value alone, and there's farmers near me that own thousands of acres, thousands. My grandfather acquired land to the 3,000. I think he had 3,000 acres when he passed. And it's also what allows you to borrow. So when you need to take operating loans or loans, you loan against your land.
Let's pivot, because I'm really interested in the domain thing, because if I'm totally honest with you, Shane, I don't know that domain squatters have the best reputation on the internet anyway.
That's what I'm here for.
And talking to you, you're clearly an incredible human being, and I'm so enjoying this conversation. So this seems that these two facts seem at odds with each other. So when did you, before we talk about domain specifically, when did you start kind of side hustles generally? So you were kind of already growing the business, but then you were thinking about stuff outside of that.
I explained the problem, right? So I explained the problem in that you can take a salary and you can get other assets. Like, you can get a car through the nursery, you can put your insurance through the nursery, you can take a lot of your cost and run them through your business. But at the end of the year, we're just not cutting big checks. Like, when it comes to retained earnings and profits, everybody has to get their share. If I get out 33% or whatever my percentage was, my dad has to take 51%. That's the law. Everybody has to take out their share of retained earning. So it became difficult to take out that money if you plan on expanding. So it always left me with just a salary. And so I'm a hustler, I'm a trader. So I started trading on the side, and I'd have some good years, but it wasn't consistent. There'd be a year I make 100,000 trading. There'd be a year I lost 20,000. I just didn't feel comfortable with that being a side hustle. So I knew I didn't have much time, right? So if you're going to side hustle when you work a retail business, I'm already working 6 and 7 days a week, and I'm getting done at 6 o'clock. So it's got to be something that I could do a couple hours at night. Well, the internet obviously is a great place to start. I was a little worried about the internet taking business from us. I wasn't sure exactly how the internet was going to work in 99, 2000. So I started registering and buying plant names. So I bought all these plant names, thinking, okay, well, maybe we can sell these plants through the internet. And that's how we'll expand as a nursery. Turns out that plant names are beautiful brand names. So I wasn't squatting on anybody. If you own hydrangea.com, I'm sure there's a company called Hydrangea, but you're not exactly, I stuck to generic terms. I'm not going out and buying MikeTyson.com, and I'm not buying Amazon or McDonald's. I'm buying generic terms that thousands of companies use. What people don't like is you have start a business and somebody else owns the name. But when I go to the beach and I see a piece of property that's doesn't have a house on it that somebody bought in 1963 and is now selling for $3 million, do I get mad at the guy because he bought the land in 1963 and never built a house? That makes no sense at all. That's how I feel about domain names. So that's how I started. But there's a little story in between that got me to domains, and I'll tell it pretty quickly. When I was on the internet, I would see blogs. Everybody wrote a blog. I'm a storyteller. Like you said, you're a storyteller in your family. And I saw these blogs and I thought, I could tell better stories. But what stories do I have? Everybody wanted to know about my trading stories. Everybody wanted to know about a 23-year-old guy slinging millions around, the pits, the drinking, the women. So I wrote a blog called Wall Street Fighter. So I started writing. And like everything I do, I just write every night. One story a night, funny story. And people liked it. And it got to 1 million visitors a month. This is in 2007, by the way. So 2007, the heyday. And I became friends with other people doing the blogs, like The Art of Manliness and a lot of ones that are still around as far as blogs. But it became really popular, and I picked up enough ads to generate $1,000 a month, maybe $1,500 a month. And I was doing something I really liked, and I could do it in an hour a night. So that's kind of how it started. But Break Media and Lionsgate Films approached me about buying my blog, which I couldn't believe that someone wanted to buy my blog because it was just me. I got a paycheck, I think it was $75,000 roughly, and then some pay over the next year or so to help teach these guys. And to me, that was a windfall. Like, that was a huge deal. And so I took all that money and started buying domains. And I bought some bad domains and I bought some good domains, but now I was a domain investor from that point on.
So then how did that side income affect relations with your dad?
He hated it. He always felt that the side income would make me less hungry in what I do. I would say it affected him greatly. I also did the NFT thing, and I sold Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs for $1 million. He wasn't excited at all. It just actually made him upset. Like, if a father was not working with you, I think he would be, that's amazing. Now you can buy this, or now you're really set. But instead he thought, now he's not going to put as much effort. Now he doesn't care as much about margins now. And I totally get that. In hindsight, I get that. And it's affected me in my job when I don't mean to brag about money. I think I'm telling a story about how I got somewhere, and I think I'm inspiring people, but it might come across as boasting or showing that I don't care as much about what we're doing because I have all this other money.
No matter his father's concerns, the reality was, even without the external money Shane was bringing in for himself, wealth itself was never a major driver for him. And leaving, that was inevitable.
I've never, ever felt broke. Here's how I measured wealth. And again, I'll tell lots of stories because I do it. I remember when I was a trader and I was not making much money, and people invited me out to go for beers. And there were 7 guys and everybody was buying a round. I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to catch that round. I didn't have enough money to buy beers for 7 people. I never forget that feeling that I couldn't participate, right? That I couldn't hang out with my friends. I have zero envy. One of my superpowers, I always tell everybody, I've never had envy. I've never yearned for anything any has. Do I want the Ferrari? Yeah, I want the Ferrari, but I don't care that you have it. I just want the car. But that bothered me. And so I've always measured things like, can I do whatever the hell I want? Do I have enough money? If you call me and say, I want to go to Africa for a week, can I afford to go do that? That's how I measured everything. Once I was at past $3 million, it doesn't matter anymore, right? Like I can do anything I want. I have no debt. I have no bills. If the billionaire asked me to go to the Masters this Saturday, I was able to do that probably 10 or 15 years into the nursery. I've always lived on my wife's salary. My wife's been working the entire time. I've never even needed my nursery paycheck. I never needed it.
So what gives you the drive then? Why do you care enough to get up and grow aggressively like you were?
I'm a driven person. Like, I have individual goals of the day, but I set my goals I'm a big runner. And when I find other runners, I know that they're good people, because why would a 55-year-old man get up at 4:30 in the morning and run 18 miles? What is the purpose of that? I'm not beating any 22-year-olds. I'm not beating 30-year-olds. Who am I competing against? It's myself. Numbers have always been a way to keep score. The numbers just become funny money. It doesn't even seem real.
So tell me about leaving the family business. When and why did you decide to step away?
That was the hardest thing I've ever done. I'll tell the story the honest, exact way. My father is going to be in charge. And he came to a point where he said, I'm going to let you run things. He got to that mentally. He stopped coming in for a couple of years. He let me pretty much do whatever I want. But every once in a while, I come down and pick at me a little bit to get some food. Yeah. So he did a little bit of seagull managing, which was difficult at times. But basically, and he had a heart attack and he almost died. Miracle survivor, very tough situation, unexpected. He got an infection and it spread to his heart. And so he survived, and it was a miracle. And he came back and he was thankful to be alive. And I was going to run the show. And then it turned into Succession. So what happened is my dad all of a sudden started feeling better and then started participating again. Like, he went from this, I'm not going to be a part of it, it's for the boys, to I'm running this damn show again and I'm going to tell you. And when I watched Succession, I just watched it and thought, oh my gosh, this is my life. Like, this is dad leaving the business. Now he's coming back. Now he's got all these plans now. And it affected me. I'm not going to lie. I think Succession is the reason I left.
When you watched Succession, that was before you left, and it was that show that kind of sparked that thought process for you.
100%. Ask my wife.
That's
we
amazing.
Just watched the first 4 episodes and we turned to each other and just went, oh shit. Like, this. And as the show went, we saw how bad it got. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm on this trajectory. What I said before about I was willing to work every day and argue with my dad, I was no longer willing to argue with my dad. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't argue. My brother also was starting to come up and deserving more and fighting with me for control. And it was too much. And how do you get out? How do you leave a family business? And I just basically said, I'm done. One day I told my dad, I quit. I'm leaving. And I don't know if he believed it or not, but 2 days later, my office was empty. My dad definitely left it, and he had no problem with it. He let my brother take over. They essentially just let me go, which I'm so thankful for. Really, honestly, it made it much easier to kind of cut me off and let me go. So all the things that I said before, where money didn't matter, I still was driven, I didn't mind arguing with my father. One day that wasn't true. And people ask me, how do you know? And you just know that one day I just couldn't do it anymore. And there's going to be times when you run a business where you're going to have a day like that and you come back the next day. There's going to be another time where you have that for a week or a month and then it comes back. And then there's going to be a time where you know, this is it. And that's how I did it. It's not beautiful. It was hard. My dad did not speak to me for a year, literally 1 year. He didn't talk to me at all. And it was easy in the fact that I was so happy. I remember that I woke up the next day, had a cup of coffee and thought, I'm so glad to be done. Like, that's when you know you've made a good decision, when you're relieved the next day.
What did that change for you financially though? Like, did you still have your 33% or what happened there?
Yeah, so that was my first thing. So he didn't speak to me for a year, and I thought, what is the K1 going to look like? Like, what could he do? Can he dilute the shares like the Facebook story? Like,
right.
Is he going to, like, I'm not kidding you. I was just waiting for the K1 the first year. Like, what is it? I talked to my lawyer, and my lawyer said, don't do anything because your dad hasn't done anything. Like, don't tell your dad. You're going to make sure you give me, like, he gave me good advice and said, just let it go. And until something bad happens, don't approach it. Just let time heal this. And I got the K1 and my 33% was on the K1. So I knew everything was going to be okay. So it did not affect that. They give me a salary. So I get half my paycheck from before, eternally for life, for being owner, as an advisor. So there was still some of that income coming in too. So they treated me fairly. They treated me nicely. We needed the time.
Did you ever feel, because you'd built this retail business yourself, right? Like, yes, it was your father's business that you came into and you create, but like, did you ever feel like it was yours and not your dad's? Like, was there any struggle with that?
If you do a really good job, you can still be the face of a company and still have a company. Just because Shane Cultra at Country Arbors Nursery, you see Shane everywhere in the commercials and TV, that doesn't mean it's not an entity all in itself that can succeed without you. It just means you have one more entity that when they see your face, they also think of the business, right? I'll always be known locally as Shane Cultra, the garden guy from Country Arbors Nursery. I'm fine with that. But I've heard on your podcast and many others that people lose their identity once they leave their business or sell their business, that they were always that person from this person. I'll always be Shane. I'm still wearing Country Arbors Nursery hat. In town, I'm still doing that. I wanted people to know that I still love the business. I'm just not participating. What I used to tell people is, you saw me 7 days a week for 25 straight years. You don't think that I deserve to not go in and be there now? Everybody agrees with that. They always wondered when I would leave because I worked so hard.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Go home, Shane. It's been 2 years since Shane left the business. And like you heard, his dad didn't speak to him for one. So you've probably figured it out. His father did eventually make up. And here's how that happened.
After a year on my dad's 80th birthday, he invited me and we had a good talk. Another key thing that I did that I think changed everything, I went to a funeral one day and saw everybody doing really nice speeches about this person. And I thought, this is the biggest waste I've ever seen. This guy's dead now. Why didn't you say all this nice stuff while he was alive? So I wrote all my dad's friends over the years. For the past 50 years, I wrote everyone and said, Dad's okay. He's not dead. But could you tell me a story about my dad and why you love him and what makes him special? Everybody wrote back. Everybody wrote back. So I took all those words, put it in a book, had it hard copied, gave it to him and said, I love you. Everybody loves you. We'll be fine. And that changed it. That was the moment. And we've been talking business. We still talk 3 or 4 times a week now about business. He's made me an owner in not just on paper, but an owner where we share how we're going to build the business, how we're going to help my brother move it forward, discussion money. But there was that period of time when I left where it was not pretty.
See, the thing with family legacy and family businesses in general is that it's all about people, and people are messy. You can't control them. You don't know what they're going to want. And sometimes so that can work out great, but other times it can work out really poorly, much worse than it did with Shane's family. And so the important thing to understand is the thing that we've learned in so many of these interviews on Moneywise so far, which is that it's not the money itself that makes you happy. It's the journey to getting there that is the satisfying part and where we can really extract so much kind of fulfillment and joy. And actually, Jackie did an episode on this really recently. So if you're interested in the subject of money and happiness, definitely go and check that out. But ultimately, if we try to force on the next generation what we want, the thing that we've built onto them, we're robbing them of that possibility to go through that journey themselves and make their own path. And so that's exactly what Shane is trying to avoid with his daughter. And the interesting thing is that if we're not trying to force it, things tend to trickle down all by themselves. Do you expect your daughter to take over your work?
0% chance.
Yeah.
0%.
0%
my daughter
chance.
She's a mathematician that specializes in climate change, which is anti everything everybody wants to know and do. How is she going to make that a living? I have no idea. But she does love, it came with plants. Like, how do plants affect the environment? How do they affect oxygen? And so she just kind of ran with that. So I'm so proud of her that she's still carrying on the plant thing.
There is a bit of legacy there. That's beautiful. I love that.
Oh, yeah. She loves plants.
What advice do you have for founders with kids? When we're thinking about multi-generational wealth, for those of us that are lucky enough to make enough money where it means something to pass it on or not, how How do you feel about multi-generational businesses, multi-generational wealth? What can we learn from your experience, do you think?
The easiest one is where the kids are apart, right? So when you have like a family nursery or somebody, they can come after work and see dad working and drive the little golf carts. It does make it more enjoyable and make it seem so much not like work. I think you need to let them participate without pressure. I think you kind of maybe need to pressure them a little bit just to participate so they can get the feel of it. But you can't make them do it, right? And you also don't want it to be their only choice. So my advice would be to let them participate in your daily activities, to show them that you can have a life while you do it. So if they see dad who's never home, I'm going to use dad because I'm a dad. If they see dad is never home and was not there for their soccer games or didn't participate, well, they're not going to want to do that either, because they're going to say, I don't want a life where my kid doesn't get attention and get what they want. So if you're not participating in their life, they're not going to participate in what your life was. The goal is to do your family job or do your job, and at the same time show them there's a world outside of it and there's still love and participation and listening, so that they also will want to do that. If you don't do that, if you're just gone all the time, they're 100% not going to do it. A kid only wants I tell people this too, all your kid wants you is for you to love their mother, right? Like, if that's all my daughter ever wanted is if I love her mom, she loves me. Like, that's all that matters. And so I show her that that's more important than my business, I'll be fine.
And I promised to come back to the financials, including Shane's current monthly spend. So to give some final context, like I said at the beginning of the episode, Shane is worth around about $10 million, and he's got some really great cash flow, including some cash flow still coming in from his domain business.
Now I make $300,000 or $400,000 a year. Like last year I made $300,000. Yeah. It depends on the year. It depends on what I sell.
Okay. And is that cash flowing, or are you just rolling it all back in like with everything else?
I usually roll it back in. It's kind of like the nursery. I just keep piling it back in to buy. It is an addiction of buying names. It's hard to not see a great name and want to buy it. So I do roll a lot of it back in. You essentially pay your taxes, and put it back in. And I keep 10 or 20% to go play.
Oh, and he also broke down his stock portfolio for us.
I put it down as $1.5 million for my wife and $300,000 for me. So we probably have, between my wife and I, we probably have $4 million in stock in the indexes. Okay. Yeah.
So it is the indexes. It's not, you're not picking individual stocks anymore.
Yeah. It's basically like, we did go high yield. Like you get to choose which ones you pick when you allocate. Yeah. So we picked high yield, and I will say that it paid off great. When Tesla was crushing that yield, there were 40% years on that. We're getting
wow.
We're averaging almost 20%. We do some hand picking. The one thing I will say is we're an Apple family. My grandfather got the first Apple in 1976, so I have been buying Apple stock. My daughter, for instance, when she was born, we bought $10,000 of Apple stock, and that's a little over $400,000 that she has right now. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, but that's hers. I don't count that as
cool.
Mine.
And so then, how much you're spending?
Yeah, so I had my total monthly spend at $5,600, but $2,000 of that is miscellaneous in case I just do something. But I literally. My house is paid. My biggest expenditure is my property tax. I have like $1,100, $1,200 because I don't have a mortgage. My cars are paid for. My home insurance and car, maybe $500 a month because we only have 2 vehicles. I used to have all these fancy cars, and I just never need them or drive them. Like, I want the Porsche, but the reality is I'll just I'll borrow my friend's Porsche or something. I have a Bronco.
So what do you drive now?
I drive a Bronco, 2-door Bronco that I absolutely adore. It's the best vehicle.
Yeah,
it's got all the tech. So cool. It's convertible. It's great looking. And then we have a Subaru, which every family who loves the mountains, you're required to buy, I think. My travel is everything. Literally, we rent 3 months a year, and we rent a house and stay at different places. So I just got back from 5 weeks in North Carolina. We rented this beautiful mountain house overlooking the mountains for $5,000. And then we rent a place in Leadville, which is from a friend for half that. So I spend 3 months a year somewhere else, but I found it's just cheaper to rent it because I can go to different places and enjoy them and the spend. So I put $1,000 down for travel and Airbnb. I do like to travel the world. If somebody asks me to go to a trip to anywhere in the world, I'll join them. And so I always put $2,000 a month aside to go on some random trip that I may go at some point. Last year I went to Singapore and Hong Kong and Lisbon and all these different places.
So I'll leave you with the idea that family legacy isn't about replicating and continuing on the work of your predecessors. It's about taking what you've been given, what you've learned, and driving forward on your own path, figuring out what that means for you. If you try to force the former, the legacy has a much slimmer chance of evolving into something bigger. Because it's never about the money, it's about the opportunity that comes from it. That's what you're passing on to your kids. So if you enjoyed this conversation and you want to hear from more people like this that are managing generational wealth, that are managing what life for their kids is going to be like from the generational wealth that they're creating, you've got to check out the community Hampton. Joinhampton.com. It's a highly vetted community of CEOs and founders, high net worth individuals that chat about this kind of stuff all the time. And it's the kind of stuff you just can't get access to anywhere else. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely go and check it out at joinhampton.com. And finally, if you want a podcast like this, my company actually produces this one that you're listening to or watching right now. And so if you would like something similar for your business, we'd love to speak to you. Check us out at lowerstreet.co/moneywise. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.